Hello, my dear students. This is Dr. Amir again, and today is a recording for Shelley's poem, Ode to the West Wind. A short introduction about the poem. The poem was written shortly after the Peterloo massacre, which took place at St. Peter Field, Manchester, England, on Monday, 16th August 1819. On this day, cavalry, meaning the soldiers who fought on horseback, charged into a crowd of around 60,000 people who had gathered to demand the reform of parliamentary representation. The poem is thus a testimony to Shelley's radical political activism. As the title suggests, it is an ode to the west wind. Obviously, the poem talks about the west wind and its impact on many things in life, including nature and the poet himself. The poem is consisted of 5 parts or cantos. Each canto is of 5 stanzas. As you will read in the first 3 cantos, the poet expresses an admiration for the west wind. He also illustrates how the wind affects the seasons. In the last 2 cantos, the poet identifies himself with the wind. He wishes to be free like the wind and spread his radical revolutionary thoughts among his people. However, as the poet admits that he is no longer young and thus cannot travel with the wind to spread his ideas, he begs the wind to be an agent of change on his behalf. He asks the wind to spread his ideas for him and bring about some socio-political changes in England. Canto 1, stanza 1. O wild west wind, thou breath of autumn being, thou from those unseen presents the leaves that are driven like ghosts from an enchanter fleeing. In the first stanza of Canto 1, the poet uses personification, personifying the west wind as a human being. This can be seen in the use of capital letters in the west wind, which is an indicative that he is addressing the wind as if it were a human being. Here the poet addresses the wind as a wild west wind, which is emanating from autumn itself. The idea of personification can further be examined when the poet describes the wind as the breath of autumn beings. The poet attributes human quality, breath, to the wind. The last line of this stanza represents the wind as a powerful god or spiritual power that has the nerve to drive away ghosts. There is a simile here as the poet compares the wind to ghosts. Both cannot be seen, but their effect can be felt. Stanza 2, Canto 1. Yellow and black and pale and hectic red, pestilence striking multitudes, O thou who charitest to their dark wintry bed, who... In stanza 2 is closely related to the first stanza. Here the poet describes the leaves of autumn, which are not colorful and shiny as the leaves of spring could be. The autumn leaves are yellow and black and pale, which is a symbol of death and sickness. The hectic red could also be read as a symbol of sickness and death. This symbol is further illuminated in the image of pestilence striking multitudes, which is a pleasant description of the autumn leaves. These leaves are described as sick and dying, which are carried by the wind to their final destination, the grave. The grave here is metaphorically described as a dark wintry bed. Stanza 3. The winged seed where they lie cold and low, each like a corpse within its grave, until thine azure, sister of the spring, shall blow. In these lines, stanza 3, Canto 1, the poet continues the description of the leaves as dead and of the wind as a powerful agent who carries the seed to their graves, where, quote, they lie cold and low like a corpse or a dead body. Here there is a simile. When the poet directly compares the leaves to a corpse, the dead leaves will remain there until the wind comes through, taking away the dead leaves but bringing new life. In a sharp contrast, which is with the description of the leaves of autumn as yellow and black and pale, here the poet described the wind as an azra or blue, which can be seen as a symbol of life. Canto 1, stanza 4. Her clarion over the dreaming earth and fell dreaming, driving sweet buds like flocks to feed in air with living hues and odors plain and hell. In this stanza, we have a personification again. The pronoun her is used by the poet to personify the wind as a female. She proclaims widely and loudly, she meaning here the wind, proclaims widely and loudly that when the wind blows, her voice can be heard like a clarion. The wind here can be drive away death, burying the dead and initiating a new life, or living hues and odors. The wind can bring various living hues or forms and odors which are clear. The last stanza of Canto 1. Wild spirits, which art moving everywhere, destroyer and preserver, here or here. In the last stanza of Canto 1, the poet pleads to the wind again. This time he calls it as a wild spirit. For the poet, this spiritual being can destroy and preserve life. The poet uses a contrast here to show how powerful the wind is. He appeals for this spirit to hear his plea, though he does not specify his request yet. This is the end of Canto 1, and we will continue the remaining cantos in the coming recordings. Thank you.